see you. Thank you.
Děkuji.
Hello.
A nyní, pane předsedo, vás poprosím, abyste se ujal slova. Mr. Speaker, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Speaker Vondráček, Prime Minister Babiš, ministers, distinguished members of this chamber. It is wonderful to be here in Prague, this inspiring city of 100 spires. I want to thank you for this invitation. This is just such a tremendous honor. I just had lunch with the speaker, who I know is 4 months into the job, so I offered him my congratulations and my condolences. Being Speaker of the House is a tough job, but it's an exciting job because of the kinds of democracies that we have. I know it's a rare privilege for a foreign leader to address this body. While I'm deeply honored, I view this far more as a tribute to the warm friendship between our countries, which shares a very unique and lasting bond of history. This is a special moment in that story. 100 years after President Woodrow Wilson collaborated with your first president, Tomáš Masaryk, to establish an independent Czechoslovak republic. Just as our declaration in 1776 spoke of a pursuit of happiness, Masaryk's declaration, drafted in Washington, calls the Czech people to begin a constant endeavor for progress. What an extraordinary endeavor this has been. There were times along the way where few would have fathomed such a gathering as this. In the mid-1970s, the Chancellor of West Germany predicted that Western Europe has, quote, only 20 or 30 more years of democracy left in it. But today, the American and Czech militaries serve side by side to keep the peace in the world. Today, American and Czech businesses invest in each other's workers and economies. Countless students, artists, and entrepreneurs go back and forth each year. I just had the privilege of addressing students at St. Charles University, where you had exchange students from America here in Prague. And today, an American speaker appears before you, the elected representatives of a free and thriving Czech people. Friends, there's one point I will make, it is this. Freedom is flourishing, and we should not take this milestone for granted. You know, in our way, our ties run even deeper than the last century. The Czech Republic is often referred to as being in the heart of Europe. It's similar to where I come from. I come from Janesville, Wisconsin, a small working-class town in America in our heartland. We raise our kids on the same block I was raised on myself. My great-great-grandfather, James Ryan, made the long voyage from Ireland during the potato famine sometime in the 1850s. To this day, there are some 67 Ryans living in Janesville, Wisconsin, within 8 blocks or 1 mile of each other. Wisconsin is where many European migrations in the mid-19th century ended. In fact, most of the first Czech settlers in America came to our state of Wisconsin. Many began as farmers. Many opened up shops. Many opened up businesses. Racine, Wisconsin, which is a city I have an absolute privilege to represent, was actually called Czech Bethlehem. The first Czech newspapers in the United States were published in Racine, Wisconsin. One of the first mayors of Racine was actually Czech. So especially where I come from, the Czech people helped shape our country. That sense of striving, that sense of promise, that sense of opportunity and upward mobility, of making the most of your God-given talents, that is at the heart of what I refer to as the American idea. It's this notion that the condition of your birth does not determine the outcome of your life. It's a beautiful concept. It's a beautiful concept based upon timeless principles: freedom, free enterprise, self-determination, government by consent. They give us the ability to chart our own course for our lives. Government is at its best when it is applying those timeless principles to the problems of the day. This American idea, it animated my own studies, and it motivated my own unlikely pursuit of public service. When I first ran for office, I was 27 years old. People, by the way, were telling a 27-year-old they weren't really willing to take a risk on such a young person running for Congress. So I had to find someone who was willing to take a risk on such a young person running for Congress to help me get started. And that person is here with us today. It is our ambassador, Steve King, who is the U.S. ambassador to the Czech Republic. This was in 1998. Steve King was already a well-known icon in Wisconsin politics. He had long been our state party chairman. And I simply would not take no for an answer. I needed to get somebody who would help me and give me some credibility. So Steve King signed on as my campaign chairman and has been my campaign chairman ever since then. And what little did I know what it would become, but what I have received out of this is a lifelong friend. This man is a true patriot and a class act. We are so blessed to have him as our ambassador to the Czech Republic. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you. Just yesterday, over at our embassy, the ambassador and I walked up the hill to the Glorieta. The view from up on top of the Glorieta is just magnificent. It really is. And there I presented our ambassador with an American flag that we recently flew above the United States Capitol to commemorate this centennial. And you may recall that in a much different and darker time, when the Iron Curtain divided this continent, that we kept our stars and stripes flying above the Glorieta. It was a signal of our unending support for the Czech people. It was a signal of our desire that we would one day return to our deeply shared values. And this republic did not merely return from communism. It roared back to life. It roared back to life in large part because of the vision of Václav Havel. Every day, just before I walk to my office, in the Speaker's office in the center of the United States Capitol, I walk by a bust of Havel. It was sculpted by a Czech artist who was forced into exile during the period of communist rule. And this Havel bust is just across the hall from a bust of Winston Churchill. I always wonder what the two of them talk at night when no one's around. They stand watch in a space in the United States Capitol, our world's oldest democracy, in an area we call the Freedom Foyer. It is a tribute to all those who fought and sacrificed for our shared guiding principles. In a scene that only a playwright of his caliber could have crafted, Havel was just months removed from prison when he addressed the United States Congress in January of 1990. In his address, he reminded the Congress of our collective responsibility to preserve the greatness of democratic values. He said this: "Our freedom, independence, and our newborn democracy have been purchased at a great cost, and we shall not surrender them." On this occasion, we would be wise to recall Havel's words and his determination as well. When Havel said, "We shall not surrender freedom," he surely knew that there were powers that would try to wrest it back, that would try to take us backwards. He knew that there were forces that would seek to remake the world in their own authoritarian image. And as we gather here to celebrate the ties of the last century, we are called to confront the challenges of the next century. The Czech people are no strangers to Russian influence, whether in the guise of oppression or whether in the guise of subversion. Russia has violated its international norms with its aggression against our closest allies in Eastern Europe. More furtively, it spreads disinformation and engages in cyber attacks. It meddles in democratic elections throughout Europe as it did in the United States. Russia does not share our interests or our values. If anything, it is seeking to undermine those values. We must see this for what it is. This is an attempt to sow discord among our people, to divide allies, and to destabilize democratic institutions. We cannot and we will not tolerate this. This week, more than 20 countries, including the United States and the Czech Republic, took action to expel Russian diplomats in response to an attack on British soil. Solidarity on this frontier of freedom is more important than ever. It's everything, really. All of the nations that once suffered under Soviet rule have a common interest in building security and prosperity. And in this work, our two republics are not simply allies mutually dedicated to the cause of liberty. We are partners. We are leaders in the community of democracies. Our common values are the foundation on which we will build a more stronger, more resilient institutions. First, there is our shared commitment to economic growth. A strong economy is essential to spreading liberty and to ensuring stability. It's what gives people, they have confidence they can get a good job. They can live a good life. They can take care of their own, their families. Faster economic growth does not solve all of our problems, but it certainly makes our problems much easier to solve. Here in the Czech Republic, you have an economy that is doing extremely well, featuring strong exports and low unemployment. We're proud that the United States is one of the top foreign investors here. Leading American companies, such as AT&T, Honeywell, GE, IBM, and Microsoft, do innovative research and development in and with the Czech Republic. And just today, I learned this. Prague is home to one of the oldest Harley-Davidson clubs in the world, which is really affectionate to us because Harley-Davidson is based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There is so much potential between our two nations on trade, which will build more opportunity for Czechs and Americans alike. Second, there is our security cooperation, an area where we have a range of tools at our disposal. Here again, the Czech Republic is a perfect example to its neighbors, leading the NATO alliance, aggressively fighting disinformation, and upholding sanctions against Russia. Thank you for that. On NATO, President Trump has said, and we have demonstrated with our words and with our actions, that we stand firmly behind Article 5, our mutual defense commitment. Please know this. This commitment is rock solid, and we thank you for your shared commitment. Of course, we have all pledged to spend at least 2% of our GDP on defense, and we're glad that the Czech Republic has a concrete plan to reach its goals in the years ahead. We look forward to seeing you take on a larger share of this responsibility. But this really isn't about meeting some artificial benchmark. It's about expanding our capabilities to address evolving threats. This is why last week, our Congress passed, just late last week, and the President signed into law, legislation increasing support for the European Deterrence Initiative. It includes beginning to build up a division's worth of equipment being pre-positioned over 5 locations on this continent. We want you to see that America is committed to an enduring presence in Europe. We want you to see that for us and for our allies, the bravery and the expertise of the Czechs are indispensable. We know and appreciate how much you have fought side by side with us in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Your soldiers bleed and fight with our soldiers, and we are grateful for that. I also want to thank you for watching over our embassy in Damascus, for providing critical support for our American citizens there. You are an active and valued member of the global coalition to defeat ISIS, and yes, we must and will defeat ISIS. We need to collectively do more to stop this insidious threat. We need all allies to assist robustly in sharing information and addressing the sources of extremism. You not only have helped us roll back ISIS on the battlefield, you have also taken part in the efforts to rebuild liberated territory so that the Iraqis can return home. This is a phenomenal accomplishment. No one knows better than you just how much that means for people to be able to return and rebuild their lives. And your contributions to these missions have greatly enhanced your stature in Europe and in the world. I'm very encouraged by the discussions we've had here and how to expand our defense cooperation even further. So thank you for that. Third, there are things we can do each and every day to support democracy and human rights. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to visit Radio Free Europe and to see firsthand the remarkable work that they are doing. It was really just incredible. And how fortunate we are to have them broadcasting here. And for that, we thank you as well. Let's let this serve as a reminder that a free and transparent media is vital for a healthy democracy. We also partner in the support of heroic efforts of organizations such as the National Endowment of Democracy and the International Republican Institute. There are so many areas where in our security ties, where in our human rights ties, we are tied together. We, as elected legislators, should never forget just how powerful it is to speak out for those who cannot speak out for themselves. After all, that is why we are here today. Because people who were free and people who sought to be free banded together in common cause. Colleagues, I know democracy is not easy. Coalitions are hard to form. It can be just as hard to win it as it is to keep it, and to keep it as it is to win it. It has flaws. That's never going to change. It has skeptics, and that certainly is never going to change. This truly is an endeavor for progress. And so long as we are imperfect beings, we will always have an imperfect form of government. But there is always that fearless aspiration to do better pushing us forward. Our task in the time that we have to serve, and our time is always limited, our task is to build up the antibodies of our institutions, to leave them resilient enough to endure come what may. This is our great moral and political responsibility. In the swirl of events that are taking over the countryside, I refer you back to those moving words of Masaryk's declaration of a century ago. The forces of darkness have served the victory of light. The longed-for age of humanity is dawning. We believe in democracy. We believe in liberty, and liberty evermore. Beautiful words. This is the time to raise our gaze. This is the time to renew our faith in what we believe, in what we can achieve, together to reach the grace and the capacity of humanity. America was with you for the first 100 years. We will be with you for the next 100 years. We will be with you always and evermore. God bless you, and thank you very much for having me here today. Appreciate it. Thank you.